Hello, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of Tales and Tactics, Beyond the Book. This show breaks down the fundamental concepts behind, alongside of, on top of, and below tabletop games and how we go about playing them. I'm your host, Troy, and joining me is my co-host, Max, and with us behind the scenes is our producer, Jay. Today's episode is a topic that we should all be able to relate to in some way, as it's about gaming groups. Who you play with, the type of people that you're sitting down at the table with.
Yeah, so this could be, well, I guess, excluding solo games.
Which we will cover.
Which is a whole other episode. This is everything from the one-on-one style of play to, like, complex club multi-party games or tournament style, like war games and things like that. Like, what's your group? What's your size? How do you organize it? What's the different strategy for, managing things? Troy, what's your initial thought here?
I think the most important thing is unity of purpose, to sound dramatic, where everyone sort of wants the same thing. Right? Your group needs to be there for the same reason, whether it is to, in a roleplay sense, to blow off steam and hang out together and eat some pizza, or to tell a great story, or to play a test of skill competitive war game, or to have a narrative historical experience out of your tabletop game. Everyone on the team needs to be on the same page, I feel, in terms of what you're seeking as an experience for the group, because I've been in groups where some people saw it as an exercise in winning a game and other people saw it as an exercise in telling a story, and it just created friction between the players who were, trying to create circumstances to pull off maneuvers while the other player was like, that's not plausible. What are you doing? And it was leading to these arguments that just completely killed the game. So I feel like number one rule is everyone get on the same page, have the conversation, have the session zero, as it were, but not for a specific game, but for the group. Like, what are we here for? I feel like that really applies to both role-playing and wargaming. I have to admit, I have more experience with wargaming, but I will say that knowing what you want out of it is so important, because people can come to the hobby for so many different reasons. And especially in wargaming, where there's sort of the core divide between the competitive scene and the more narrative scene. You got to know where you are on that bridge. And it doesn't mean that you can't do both. Like, for sure, you can take your time and experiment, explore, switch it up week to week. But at least as a group, you should know what you want out of it. And I feel it would be very similar for your average role-playing group. But Max, give me your thoughts.
Yeah, actually, there's a similar dynamic between what you describe as a narrative and competitive game. Competitive isn't, well, you could put it in those terms, but I would guess it's more gamist or mechanical. So it's where you get your power gamers. They live on that side of
the door kicking, right?
Yeah, that side of the spectrum. The pragmatist style of, the fun of the game is playing the game. And then you have the dramatist approach, which is, I want to embody my character. And they're both valid. And I think most people land somewhere around the middle.
Yep.
I have obviously run into people who are exceptions to that. I find that they are exceptions that prove the rule for the most part. So I've run open games in stores, game societies. I'm a member of a gaming society. And you really want to treat those situations a little differently, unless, of course, you have a dedicated group and you're just using that space to play. There's a very different thing between having an open style game, like anybody can join, grab a character, roll one up, whatever, and the sort of committed, in-depth style of play. I don't run these things at all in the same way. And if there is a style of game that works for the open play style of RPG, it's dungeon crawlers.
Okay.
So the reason for this is that characters are contained within whatever their character is, and you as the dungeon master don't have to think about the plots. You just have to think about characters and their relationships, and then the main focus of the game is this thing that people are trying to break into and get loot out of. And that's sort of the focal point of the fun. And it's not that you couldn't run other games or that game won't have drama or anything like that. But it's nice to have that fallback, which is we'll just go into the dungeon.
Well, it gives that unity that you're seeking, where like everyone there knows what they want to do and is going to do it together. Something that would be challenging in an open game, I perceive, would be party splitting. I could see that being arduous to the game master.
I don't have a huge problem with that, depending on the group size and the level of splitting that happens.
Right.
I warn people that splitting the party will probably slow things down for them.
Yes.
I don't find that a painful thing, provided people are willing to be patient about it and not deliberately try to make that more complicated than it needs to be.
Okay.
I have kicked somebody out of the group because they, intentionally or not, doesn't really matter to me, were trying to be different and run off on their own and encounter things and then complain to me that it's like, oh, well, I have to wait like this whole time before anything happens. I'm like, yeah, because there are 4 people over here and you.
Right.
And so the sequence of turn, like I just go through everybody. If they're in a group, I'll address the group and then I'll go person by person, usually to the left of me. And if they're in a separate group, then I'll just do the same thing. I'll address, okay, you enter room, you see this. What do you do? What do you do? I don't have a huge, I mean, it's probably just practice, but I don't have a huge difficulty in multitasking on that level. It's not even really multitasking. You're just explaining different things. And that's the other nice thing about the dungeon crawler is I don't have to improvise as much because you have a mega dungeon is probably the best thing to bring.
Right.
The nice thing also about that is if somebody doesn't show up one week and then they show up one week and then they don't show up the next, I have procedures for exiting the dungeon, depending on what level they're on and the number of rooms. I do a quick calculation of how much distance they would cover, and then I do a percentage roll based on what would happen. And then if that percentage hits, I have a table that has, well, these are the things like, oh, you ran into some guys and you lost an item.
Oh, so it's like a fast travel, so to speak.
Yeah, you won't die. I don't have any condition, but you can be injured in that process.
Oh.
I find what that does is it makes people more cautious so that like I don't want to have to auto escape, because that means that you're at the mercy of the dice. Whereas if you like, okay, we're gonna play for 4 hours, and around that last hour mark, we're gonna think of an exit strategy.
Oh, clever. Okay, I like that. I like the practicality of that thinking.
Even though in some cases, some of those outcomes on the escape roll might be actually easier than evading a bunch of random encounters.
Are there good things on that escape roll, like finding items?
No, it's mostly neutral to negative.
Ah, okay.
The chance of me rolling on that table is dependent on how far in they decide to quit.
Okay.
It's a remedy against recklessness.
Right.
It's a stick that gets the player to think, okay, I want to be in this far, but we want to be able to escape. And then sometimes they're like, oh, well, we got up, we're 5 levels deep and we wanted to get up to like the 2nd level. And we're like, we don't want to, we have to camp. And this usually doesn't happen. I think this happened like once, but they weren't able in the session because people wanted to quit, that they got up to the point where they weren't all the way out, but they had reduced the chance of an escape encounter. So they were just like, oh, just roll it.
Oh, clever.
We got all the way up to level 2 and they didn't get it. I remember I rolled out the chance of escape and it worked. They did that by lessening the odds. So yeah, but digression to that aside, that type of game works if you just, and I'm speaking more to people who run things here. If you just want to run a game that anybody can just fold themselves into, the main thing is to have one consistent rule set that back to front, probably one that caters specifically to the game you're playing.
Oh, okay. Like the specific format of play, you mean?
Well, the rules should conform to that type of game that you want to run.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
But the nice thing about having like a fixed obstacle course style game, a dungeon game, you have this focal point. It's like, as you say, like a fit to purpose. Everyone can have a shared goal and you can add secondary things to that. But the reason for being in the game is you are some kind of dungeon raider.
Yeah. Crypt guys.
Yeah. And that's the thing. So that's the main point of the game. And then you could also try to get in good with the king or the local lord, or you can try to form your thieves guild or make a gang war against another one, right? But that's all secondary to the fact that your main objective is to do this one thing, and the fun of it is, kicking down doors and fighting monsters and getting loot. It's nice because people can understand that concept really easily. So if they don't know what to do, that's quite clear. It's easy to run because you just have one primary location and a few surrounding bits. And I've even had ones where I'm like, oh, some kind of explorers guild has basically set up a supply chain like tent pavilion around the entrance to the dungeon.
Oh, I love that.
Like I really like shorten the chain there. If you really want to have a fast game, it's basically there's a dungeoneering, like a dungeon exploring company that's set up shop right at the front door. You can then handle all of like the resupply things and what they're pulling in, and and it can be in the middle of nowhere, so that the players are like, well, I'm going to go wander around, and you just make the wilderness really dangerous. And if they want to do that, they can. It's not very profitable. Let's jump back to like what I guess most people's standard game would be, which is you and some of your friends want to play something. You might want to play a role-playing game, a war game, hell, even a board game of sufficient complexity. I'm thinking Twilight Imperium. That's a commitment.
100%.
And there's a few other games of that caliber of complexity where you're going to be dedicating the better part of a day to it.
Heck, we've even covered some of them.
Yep. And I hope to cover more of them, Twilight Imperium included.
Yeah, that would be fun.
So how do you get these people together, especially if it's going to extend beyond a single session? So we're not talking one-shot territory, which for the most part, authors of such things have gotten a lot better at this, but almost every one-shot I've ever played has never been one session.
Yes.
If you've tried that, but it's like we either quit it there and it's over, or we come back at least one more time.
Well, it depends on the nature of the game system, but there can be an intoxication with a new character. Of like, oh, I love this guy. This guy's the coolest guy I've ever had. I have to keep playing with them. Even if it was only intended to be a 1 or 2 night affair, people sometimes like their characters and they want to keep going.
Yeah, I've even had one-shots that turn into campaigns, and it wasn't even intentional. It's just people had a lot of fun with whatever it was that we were playing, and they liked their characters. Or, in some cases, people have remade characters from one-shots in other games. The main point to this, at least on our topic, is you're usually going to people that you already know are into this. There is, at least in the traditional sense, pre-internet, your gaming group was probably people you met in high school and then maybe met other people through them. And if you really got into it, you might find your way to a club or a society.
Right.
Nowadays, there's actually a lot of ways you can do role-playing. I mean, you and I do RP and war games. I mean, we're not in the same city, so that helps. Well, that's pretty much the only way to do it.
Yep. You're absolutely right. We're on Discord, we're on Tabletop Sim, and we're using the tools for online play pretty effectively. I might want to try more of a purpose-built engine like Roll20 a little bit more, but I haven't really felt the need for it with our style of play because we're not tactical grid fighters. So we don't really need to know how many grid spaces we are away from things all the time. But I will say the one time we played Dungeon Crawl Classics on that massive grid map that you drew, it was really cool because we were like moving our guy around, and it was a very different experience than like, okay, I describe myself walking in the room. What do I see? It was like I move my counter into the room and the line of sight shows me the illustrated room that you've drawn. So that was like really sick. I actually dug that, but I don't know that I would do that as like a replacement for all types of RP, but it was cool doing that. I really saw a lot of value.
So VTTs are helpful for communicating like stable information of the game. The thing that I ran for you, it had some definite advantages. It feels like a very different game. It is very much a grid play game. We were using things like Fog of War, and like it has the idea. So it was basically a map with character icons that you would move around, and they would actually have line of sight based on whatever item of lighting. Sorry, I should say I was using Fantasy Grounds to do this.
Oh, yes, we were.
That worked, and that system is pretty flexible within the domain of the thing you're doing, but it's exceptionally DIY to the level that the GM has to do a lot of front loading and prep in a way that they haven't had to do before. You can obviously get pre-built maps and dungeons and stuff like that, but you basically have to run them as is, or you have to do an exceptional level of customization. I think they've gotten more tools for this, but if I'm going to run that type of a game, I'm probably going to want to put a lot of detail into each area so that it feels like you're actually moving into different areas. But again, it also just feels like a totally different game. It's neat, but it does feel way more mechanical. And if you're into that, that's totally fine. And it doesn't have to be, but it pushes things in that direction. Whereas if I do Theater of the Mind, like, I can use the same tools and just not draw anything. In fact, I've really gone back to the idea of just using Discord, a webcam for my dice bowl, and like a drawing program.
With a screen share of the drawings?
It was just a screen share of like, so we're in combat and you're here and you're here and you're here, right? And I have different, whatever the icons are on different layers and move things around. Obviously, the style of game that I was doing with Fantasy Grounds is more akin to something that uses dungeon terrain.
Yes.
Do you think dungeon terrain is a bit anachronistic in the sense that you have these fixed pieces and you pretty much just have to figure out I mean, I've seen people make them more modular, but the really good ones are like fixed pieces. And then you need to have a place to keep all of that stuff. And back in the day, before like computer role-playing was as sophisticated, which is to say for that style of game doesn't necessarily have to be unique for that long. NetHack is a perfect example of taking that style of play and making it so dynamic that like no human being could probably do that. That said, it is restrictive, so it's not exactly like role-playing. But my point is the idea of having these like bespoke pieces, is that even like a fun thing to do if you don't have the nostalgia for enjoying it?
Well, it's kind of like fixed terrain in a war game, right? Where it's like everyone can use a bunker 10 times, but can you use the radar station more than 2 or 3? You know, it's a very similar thing where it's like, oh, I made an awesome armory and we're going to fight in it every dungeon. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like obviously a lot of these pieces are rearrangeable and stuff like that.
Right.
And what is it, like the Games Workshop's battle boards, right? Like very specific terrain layout.
Yep.
And like now every fight is in this weird shallow canyon-like thing. Not really. It's not even really a canyon.
I know what you're saying, though.
It's got some fixed features where in the case of war games, I feel that like having a really, I don't know, like it's really cool to have that verisimilitude with like pieces on the table. And I've seen people do, like our buddy Darren has really good like modular, but not, and it's very detailed and it looks really cool. But then the way that I play with my friends back where I used to live was we would use like a felt tarp, and then we would even like take material and shove it underneath to make hills.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And it was very modular. But the verisimilitude was a lot less because it looked like a big felt cloth with like stuff shoved under it. You know, and then you put terrain on top of that, put your houses and your trees and stuff.
Right. Totally. You lay some roads down, put a couple hedgeries in, and you're in the zone. But I mean, that's an interesting thing, though, that's kind of nice about group play for wargamers, is you do have the ability to pool your resources. As a group gamer in a wargaming team with Darren, we have been able to, over the last decade, amass such a fantastic Normandy World War II table that it's just so rewarding to game on with our painted forces. So that's something that I could not have done alone, you know? I did need a like-minded gamer, someone who was on the same page as me, and I'm very fortunate that I have that here. But it's a group project sometimes. Like, you can for sure solo your way through the whole hobby and have a wonderful time. And I do tons of solo gaming personally. I kind of like it more than playing video games, you know? So I kind of do it more often than more than I boot up a PC game. I play a solo round of a miniatures game, right? So I like that. But the group play facilitates the access and the scale of things in a way that most solo gamers can't do. I mean, some people can because, resources are different for different folks and stuff. Like, I totally get that. But I found with me and Darren, our experience was by working together, we were able to achieve something that we couldn't do alone. And man, is it rewarding. And solo play has so much value, but there is something that you can't, like, solo gaming can surprise you really well, but the surprise doesn't come from you. The surprise comes from the outcomes through the chance that you're employing, right? Through the dice, the cards, the charts, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're playing against another opponent, you also have their brain that you cannot read, hopefully. And dealing with that just adds so much to the game. So I find that being really valuable. My wargaming group was a little bigger, and so was my RPG group, but some people have become parents, and that's life. That happens. And so our group has become smaller. And we've had to recast the members of one of our big Call of Cthulhu campaigns in response to this, which is absolutely life and totally cool. You just roll with it. But that's something you also must be comfortable with, is that things can change in a gaming group and people can move on, they can move, they can lose interest. There can be lots of things that can happen that might make it so you have to pivot. And being comfortable with that pivot is huge. You know what I'm saying? Nothing is so sacred that you can't change it to make it work for purpose in a gaming group. Like for us, we have two of our key players in our big Call of Cthulhu campaign are moving on because of their family situation, which is super cool for them. And we're nothing but thrilled. But I would also say we now are bringing in two new players who have never played Call of Cthulhu. So we kind of are going to almost like stop what we're doing to give them an introduction because they need to know how this works. They can't just start 60% of the way through massive Nyarlathotep and be expected to know what's happening, so we got to build them in. We got to create. So our dungeon master, our game master is, our lore keeper is going to go ahead and create like an introductory amendment for the campaign that bridges in these two new characters and gives them a chance to not only mechanically become familiar with Call of Cthulhu, but kind of get to grips with the themes and tones of the greater campaign before they're just thrust directly into a cultist gunfight.
Right, yeah. So there's a certain level of onboarding, which is another issue about like groups. So yeah, like for me, I've always handled either people that I know, like you and Jay and various other people that I can wrangle, or I depend on game stores or gaming societies, which they're convenient for me because I can very easily choose to run that day or game with another group and try something different. It's nice to have a lot of variety. I like the in-person interaction, but some people don't have that, and there are resources online like Start Playing is one of them that I've stumbled across, but Reddit's r/LFG, so looking for game.
Yeah.
That's probably aside from posting a personal ad on some site, that's probably a good way to go. I think game stores are really important to this because it might not even be that you play there, but you just meet people and then you can arrange a time to like rotate between people's places or invite people over. But then there's also the store if you have the space and want to use it. I find at least with my local gaming society, local, still back where I used to live, but I do go out there occasionally. But it's like once a month. So whatever you're running has got to kind of conform to that. Again, there are certain sorts of role-playing games that work that way. Just about any war game will work that way. And as I was saying, like picking something that's the rules suit the sort of game that you want to run if you're running something for like random people. For instance, I would actually recommend not using, like if you're running Dungeons and Dragons and you're going to run a dungeon game, which is not the only system you could do this with, but based on its familiarity, I'd actually probably recommend running something more OSR or even an actually old, like running BX or AD&D. As long as you're familiar with the system and you can coach people through any of the weird unfamiliarities. But the nice thing about those games is that they're extremely focused on that form of experience.
Right.
Even third edition's actually pretty good at this. Or I have issues with Pathfinder, but it will work in this function. I find it a little too bloated with features sometimes, and it's very hard to clock what any one thing will do, but it's totally usable. There's Dungeon Fantasy for GURPS, though, again, you'd really have to know GURPS to be able to run that comfortably. I've been trying to get my head around it, and I'm like,
well, it's GURPS. I mean, it's going to do that for you a little bit.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I know it enough that I probably could, but there's always this level of uncertainty, even though that subline of GURPS books called Dungeon Fantasy is actually a more streamlined and focused. That's why I mentioned it, because it's fit to the purpose of running that style of game. And remember, a dungeon doesn't have to be a fantasy dungeon. You know, you can get your Space Hulk scenario, which is just a dungeon in space. And if you want to sci-fi that up, you can totally do that. But I wouldn't run Call of Cthulhu with that in mind. Or you can try to do the one-shot thing. So if you wanted to run a horror Call of Cthulhu thing, you'd run the smallest, most compact Call of Cthulhu scenario you could complete in a single evening.
It's the one in that house. It's the one in that house where the house is cursed. You know the one?
Oh, damn. I always forget. That's like the scenario.
I know. It's great. I tried to sabotage the ritual when we were playing it, but someone caught me sabotaging the ritual, so they like tackled my guy, and I was like, I've gone mad. It was a lot of fun.
Most people's memories are about the bed, obviously.
Oh, yes.
I have been thrown out that window, and I've thrown people out of that window many times. But I mean, that just goes to show how nicely succinct that is for running an open invite game.
Yep. It's a really good example.
The trouble is finding people who, so say you don't have a group of friends, say you have to go to some random people that maybe you're meeting online. The next tricky thing is having a common purpose. So we know what sort of game we're going to run. We feel reasonably confident with the person running it, or we're doing it and we feel confident. But there's some other factors that you want to keep into this, which is, are people like, even though we might all be playing the same game, we don't run it the same way. We don't necessarily share or leave behind all of our expectations about how that plays. So all the more reason to choose a system that is very focused and simple. But even so, some people are going to expect it to be more dramatic, even though the game might only peripherally have that in mind, and they just want to have fun with it. And some people might want to be much more like tactical and economic about how they play the game, because that's the fun part. And as long as those things don't clash, I think it's fine, so long as everybody's having fun and nobody's overdoing it in any particular way.
Right.
But on top of that, then there's the attitude thing. You don't know these people. You want everyone to be friendly, but some people, they got weird hangups. They do weird things. They are overly social. They're sometimes aggressive. They don't take losing well. That's a common one that I've run into.
Right.
And it's weird to say losing in a role-playing game, but some people have the mentality that, like, if I'm not getting like optimal winning conditions all the time, then somehow that's bad. Like even with character roles, it's like, oh, I got a negative stat or some low stat, and then they're really upset about it. And it's like, no, man, that's the fun part, is that now you have to think of how to solve problems without that.
Yes, indeed. No, that's so true. Like the disposition and demeanor of your group influences what you do at the table as much as the rules do, you know? So like I have found really meshing with some groups, but other groups I've played with in like when I was in university, we did like before I was in our university, it was in a previous one. And like, I remember playing with someone and everything that they did was an excuse to enact some type of cruel power fantasy on a goblin we had captured. And it was sort of like, that's not what I'm there for. Like I'm not there to slay goblins. Like let's get it on. But I'm not there to like enact some weird torture fantasy with a goblin I've captured. And it's kind of like, what are we doing? And it was good that the GM was smart and moved on. But it was sort of a thing where it was like, oh, that's an example of the dispositions of a group sometimes clashing, where people have different expectations or even different sentiments as to like what is, I don't like the word appropriate per se, but what is more like within the bounds of the table's discussion and limits, you know?
I've had players just straight up cheat.
Oh, that's weird. Yeah, totally.
In a game that you were in. I don't know if you remember that. I ran a game at when we were in in college, and we invited someone who was interested, and I'll leave their name out of it, but he was cheating. He was close rolling, right? Like, if anyone's familiar with that idea, like you roll and you're like, oh yeah, I totally got a 17, and it's like, you've been getting a lot of high rolls.
I know what you mean. And yes, that's a real thing. It's so foreign to me. Like, I have felt the impulse in Chain of Command to be like, no, I rolled exactly 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I've got everything I need to win this turn. But no, that's not how it works. That's not the point. And the truth of a good game is that you're playing within the limitations of the resources presented to you, and that's the fun bit.
So, like, how do you deal with problem players? Well, I mean, there are endless lists of YouTube videos out there describing such players and how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I tend to take a very simple thing. One, first, deterrent, because they might not be doing it consciously. So if you just change something that makes it so they can't do that anymore, and that fixes the problem, no problem. So like with our cheater guy, I'd just be like, okay, just for simplicity's sake or just for transparency, everybody's going to throw into this rolling box right in the middle of the table.
Right. Perfect.
Didn't have to do anything. Might have to keep an eye on him just to see that he's not doing something else.
But no one is singled out. The gameplay proceeds and you've solved the problem.
Yeah, and again, I keep a copy of everybody's sheet behind the screen. So if I think he's like, so-and-so is like picking some crazy modifier because they don't think I'm looking, I do cross-check that. I don't usually if I don't think there's something weird going on.
Right. It's good to have in the pocket. You know what I'm saying?
Just in case. I've got my like crib note version of everybody's character. It's a little tough with some characters that use like skills.
Or have an extensive spell list or whatever.
Sure, some really complicated sheet. But I have all the pertinent information necessary, also so that I can do hidden rolls and things like that.
Yes, perfect.
So that's phase one. Just change the conditions of things to make it so that they can't do that. Whatever it is they're doing, whatever problem behavior. Some things can't be addressed in that way, especially if, say, they're, being obnoxiously cruel in the game, like your description, or if they're harassing other players. I've had that too.
Right.
There was one game I was running where one of the guys at my table was being really obnoxious to a girl that was playing with us.
Oh, dear.
And what I did was I did what I usually do, which is do the soft shift of this and see what happens, if nothing else. Because I could be wrong, or I might not be reading the situation right. So rearranging the situation and then keeping an eye on it is always helpful.
Yeah.
So I just called a break and then had her sit on the opposite side next to where I was. And then the guy kept doing it. He just kept doing it in a different way. And then we get to phase two, which is you take that person aside and you kind of address that problem.
Yeah, that's where the maturity comes in, because you want to be able to do this gracefully, but it is still important that you have a communication. Like, the whole point of the hobby is that we are communicating for shared intent, and that is enjoyment. So you have to be able to have some of the more challenging conversations if they come warranted. And to get a group on the same page, sometimes it's necessary to sit someone down, because they might not be self-aware enough to catch it. Like, I've realized I was spotlighting before, and I've been like, oh crap, this whole 2 hours I've been making it about me. I need to backseat myself. And I've caught myself doing that, and I've done it consciously. But sometimes you don't notice what your behavior is until someone points it out to you.
Yeah, and I've even had some cases, that previous example not being one of those, where the person was like, oh, sorry, yeah, I'm used to playing, like, this is how I play my character in my other friend's game. And I was like, yeah, and that's fine if you guys are having fun with that. But obviously, if it's making somebody uncomfortable here, then let's not.
Yeah.
Hopefully they're understanding about it. A couple times it turns into an argument or a fight, or someone, gets really defensive about it. Again, this is not something that I've had to deal with a lot, though I have had to deal with it. If they agree, but it persists, and this is the tough one, but like sometimes I got to do it. I have to like call it at the table.
Oh, make it a public announcement.
Effectively, yeah. I need to be like, okay, everybody, there's an issue going on. I want to know if everybody is aware of this and if other people are being bothered by it. I don't want to speak for everybody, but if we're all feeling the same way, and certainly if there's a specific person who's being affected, I'm just going to say, look, this is not, like, I address it broadly. I'm not going to say this person, but I'm going to say this behavior is not allowed at my table. Usually this will get one of two reactions. People will agree, and that person will then be persuaded by the consensus at the table to not do it.
Yeah.
You've effectively put them on the spot. Or they'll freak out, and then you just kick them out. You just tell them to leave. You sometimes don't want to make a scene about it, but usually those people are going to make a scene anyway. If it's going to get to that point. I know sometimes that's like not the best strategy, but I tend to call it more like a coach than a counselor, you know, because we're here to play a game. This game has rules and conduct and certain ways of doing things. And if you're going to be a jerk, then I'm going to show everybody that you're a jerk. Or I'm at least going to get the consensus that everybody else thinks you're a jerk too.
I know what you mean. And like, I've seen wargaming circles where players have been like not talked to, and then their behavior escalates.
Sure. Yeah.
It's almost like where there are players who are sort of like, they're not like aggressive to the person across the table to them, but they're like aggressive about the negativity of certain things that happen in the game. Like if they get a unit wiped or something, they might like take a really sharply negative tone and like curse it out. And like swearing is like whatever. Different groups are comfortable with it, like whatever. But like it's kind of like they would kind of get like, whoa, what's up? And no one said anything because everyone was sort of uncomfortable about it. And then this person eventually quit the game, but it was like awkward and it didn't need to be. I could have stepped in, but that was an emotional maturity thing perhaps on my part as well. But it's just something that I think is more important than not is using your communication abilities to keep everyone on that unified purpose, right? We're all doing the same thing here and we can all talk about it. And as long as we keep up a respectful tone, we're basically going to get what we want out of it, as long as we have a good rule set and we're doing the right thing.
You will very quickly be able to spot out people who might not be as good at regulating their emotions. And I guarantee that in almost every situation where there's a problem like the one we're talking about, or the types of ones that we're talking about, it's that fact. It's somebody who cannot regulate their emotions while they're playing the game. Either they can't compartmentalize the game from their own personal ego, or they just have very strong reactions to whatever is going on, and then they get carried away with that. The problem with that is that might be a momentary thing. You know, like people don't like losing, or if they don't like the idea of being kind of like held into a corner and like they're not getting anything, or they're not succeeding, or they've got bad rules the whole night.
I've complained about that. I've complained about that.
Yeah, no, I've had that happen to me, and it sucks. I've had that happen to me as a GM. I'm just like, wow, these people are steamrolling this, and that's just because I can't get a good roll.
Yeah.
And I tend to roll out in the open where people see it, so I'm like, oh, I can't take that back. Oh yeah, that's a plus 10 modifier on that you don't know about. Like, again, you need some social intelligence around this, but you usually are able to spot people that you think might be an issue, and they might not be an issue, right? Like, I'm not about saying like, oh, you know, you're not mature enough for this, or I get the sense that you're not, therefore don't play. I'm like, I do not cast guilt on anybody until they've actually done something.
Yeah, I respect that.
It is part of my job as the person hosting whatever the game is to do that, right? And of course, the game, especially among wargamers, there's all sorts of peculiar sorts, you know?
Yeah.
There are people that run all ends of the spectrum of behavior.
Absolutely.
You have to be open to that, at least to some degree, so long as it isn't a problem. So you have to have a clear criteria of like, okay, it's bothering somebody else, it's slowing down the game, it's, you know, causing unnecessary levels of tension, or it's no fun for you. Like, you're a player too, right? You matter in this equation. And if it goes beyond your tolerance, then you just be like, hey, I'm not having a lot of fun by you doing such and such a thing. Can you just not do that?
Yeah, 100%.
Or sometimes it's helpful to turn it into a question, like, what's the thought behind this type of action?
Yeah.
If they're being a sleazebag, then they'll be like, oh, it's what my character would have done. And I'm like,
oh, I hate when when the thief tries to rob the paladin and then says it's what my character would do.
Yeah. And I can find in-game ways to fix that problem pretty quick. I'm like, you're the one evil character traveling out with the ostensibly good party. Well, there's always a chance someone will figure it out.
Ain't it just? Yeah, I agree. Detect evil. Oh, wait, what's the guy beside me flashing red for?
To be fair, I never used to detect evil in that way.
Yes, maybe that's illegal, but I find that funny.
Well, I know that people do that. Like, they're like, oh, detect evil? That means I can check people's alignment, provided it's evil. I'm like, I don't think that's how that spell works. I'm pretty sure the designers aren't that stupid. Because, like, how are you supposed to have a multi... I mean, that's a whole rabbit hole we can go down, but...
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I even have issues with alignment as far as, like, well, what if there's, like, someone has infiltrated the priesthood and is evil? Like, how long are they going to last in that situation?
Well, clearly they've faked it to make it enough that they're now good. So it's all good.
Why can't you cast spells?
Hey, you're our paladin, but you seem to do no healing. What's going on with that? Nothing. Don't ask any further.
Also, you're carrying a lot of poison with you.
All your clothing is black and purple. Something is wrong.
It's part of a disposal program.
In my experience, I found the best way to enjoy a group setting in gaming is to be gracious, is to be down with different people's interpretation of fun, and to advocate for what you think is the most fun at the table so that everyone sort of gets a chance. Like, I have had some really great wargaming games against total strangers where I've never met them again. And I've also had games where it was like a 3-hour slog to get through. And the person wasn't a bad person. They weren't bad at all. I'm not mad. But it was just like, wow, let's not do that again.
I prefer to be upfront about those things. I know that you can just not invite them next time and kind of ghost them, and maybe they'll get the idea. I always feel it feels underhand.
Yeah, because it feels like the motivation could be interpreted as something beyond what it was. You know what I'm trying to say?
Like, one, you deprive that person of maybe making a chance, unless, of course, they had like a terrible time, in which case they know full well why I didn't invite them.
Yeah.
If they make a scene, like, I don't need to explain.
Yes.
But if they were doing something like, one, it deprives them of an opportunity to correct their behavior. And two, they won't learn anything from that. They're just going to go to somebody else's table and act like a jerk. Maybe they'll find one where acting like a jerk is the fun thing to do and everyone's cool with that. That's possible.
Yeah.
But usually if you spot something like that, you know when you're running like that kind of game. And I've run that kind of game on occasion just to see what it was like.
Yeah.
But you know that you're running something that's like fringe. Like, I don't know. If you want to play a really, really like weird game of human occupied landfill or the most like depraved game of paranoia, most of the time that's probably not the norm. And it's worth pointing that out. I think it's always good to do the right thing and tell people what, like, hey, I'm probably not going to invite you back again because this, and this. And some people I've even had people who are straight up like, you know what? I totally get that. And you know what? Maybe it's better that you don't do that because this is my style of play. To be fair, in the case that I'm thinking of right now, is just somebody who was hamming it up too much.
Oh, yeah.
And chewing the scenery. As I said, you don't really know unless you ask or at least investigate and start asking questions. So that's the thing.
Yeah.
And then as far as, there's never been a time to find a group more easily. Obviously, you need to have the guts to go out and then either the easiest thing in that sense is to just find a group and start playing. So go to a store, go to one of those, go to a forum,
go to a convention, right? Yeah.
Whatever, online. And just say, hey, yeah, I'm down to figure this out. I don't know how it's going to work, but presumably people have ideas. And if we have a conversation, we'll find a method that works for everybody. And if not, then I'll just try something else. I'll go to some other place. Or, you know people and you have a group that you're comfortable with. I always find I'm missing one person.
I know.
Is that something?
That's so true. Yeah.
I've got a bunch of people that I know and I can get together like 2 of them any day of the week, but I can't get 3 or 4.
Yeah.
Depending on what I'm running.
I know what you mean. That is hilarious and a fact.
That's my curse for some reason. And yeah, there's also the people that get stuck in like the forever GM. And I'm somebody that likes running games as much as I like playing them.
Yeah.
But yeah, you don't want to get stuck in that spot either, where you're only ever being the prep guy, right? You know,
Yeah, it's like being the person at school who had to do the actual project work where everyone sits around and talks, but you write the notes and make the PowerPoint.
100%. Yeah. It's tiresome if nothing else. You know, it's nice to have a break where you don't have to do any of that and you can still enjoy your hobby. Yeah, what other dynamics of group play? Like wargaming is an interesting one because, well, you know, there's like tournaments and stuff that exists in role-playing games, but more as like a convention thing.
Yeah.
I don't know that a lot of people do role-playing tournament games anymore, or at least less common. But in wargaming, you know, there's sometimes, you know, you got your 40K tournament and all sorts of zoo animals show up.
I've been in tournaments. Yep.
Most people are quite lovely. Some people need to have a conversation about hygiene.
That happens. That's a real thing. Like, I think if you're going to be around other people, brush your teeth, have a shower, put deodorant on. That's it. You're good now. You don't need to be like wearing cologne or be like some fancy guy with a chain on, like whatever. But I'm saying shower. That's it. You're good. It takes 4 minutes.
Bring your best self.
Yeah.
Right? You know, like you don't have, it's not like you're going on a date, but you should, I like to think of it as a step slightly below job interview.
That makes sense.
You don't want to come to impress people necessarily, but you want to, you don't want to be noticed until you want to be noticed. And hopefully it's because you want to play a game and not because you smell of unchanged laundry and BO. So
indeed. Well, I would say, like, as a person who's been in groups of different natures, the most important thing that I found is what we've been talking about. It's that communication and being considerate of the people you're in the group with. If you can be a little bit considerate and work a little bit towards a group harmony, then you'll all get double the enjoyment out of the hobby you're there for. I find when people play their own game in a group setting, like, oh, my character's motivation would be to leave. It's like, that's not the point. You can break off from the party and stuff, party split. We've talked about that. But it's kind of like when people have really divorced motivations from the group.
Yeah.
That it's like, we're just not in alignment. We're wasting our time. And it doesn't mean like kick your friends out, but it also means use your words, have the conversation, and sort of determine together what is the right balance point for the group. Like, my favorite campaign that I've ever played as a wargaming campaign was a really intense chain of command campaign. And it was gritty and it was hard. And I lost more than I won by a lot. But it still is one of my all-time favorites because we were on exactly the same page with the narrative. And like, we knew, like, it was all about the outcome of the story and the drama of the characters. And like Ross Wallace, that corporal, making that move on the rear, like when he flanked that building, it was crazy. And I love that campaign memory for that. I've even been to the village in real life where that campaign was set. Like, that's how into that one I was. Like, I went to that village in France to check it out. And, it was really wild to see the ground and then compare it to like what we played over. It was like when we played it, we were very rudimentary compared to what we could do now. But it was really cool. I found it really intriguing to me. And even though the gameplay wasn't always the most fun because I got smoked a few notable times, it was still such an awesome campaign. We both were on exactly the same page. We got everything we wanted out of it. And to this day, we reminisce about it every once in a while. So I think in a group, you can enrich the hobby in a way that is really special. And when we get to our solo episode, we'll talk about how you can enrich the hobby by yourself in also a very special, powerful way. But when in a group, you're dealing with a cool third heat. You know, that other mind and the shared experience you're creating. And that can lead to really awesome stuff on the table, things you could not have foreseen yourself, opportunities for challenge you could just not have playing against a rule set back and forth. Like, you can solo many games, but some games with hidden information really do demand that other player to drive out what makes that rule set work. So it's all in the mix. And I would just say, if you're fortunate enough to have the friends already, then be a good friend to them and enjoy what you have. If you're looking for a group, then be open-minded and be open to experiment a little bit too. Because it's kind of like what people say about like when you're looking for a professional, you know, like it might not be the first guy you find, you know,
yeah,
like that contractor might not be the first quote you take, but it's still important that you look around and try and find something that works for you.
Yeah, and you might discover a group of people that play in a different way that you might be into, or you also want to see like what are most people playing. And that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be down to do what you want to do. Here's just like another point about like store etiquette, or like if you're going in.
Yeah.
I think the best thing to do in that case, I mean, some people are just up for like, hey, I want to run it. I've never run anything here before. But like, if you want to have really good success, I'd play in somebody else's game in that place.
Oh, so get in someone's game first, try it, and then you can perhaps run something else.
Well, and it just gets your face out there. People will get to know you on a personal level, and also like how you handle some aspects of gaming. And this is true of wargaming too, 100%. Go to a place where somebody's running something like a convention or a society event, and just be like, hey, I don't know that, or maybe I do know that, and I'm going to see if I can get in on that game. And most people are pretty cool about that, obviously, because they want to play with somebody else. And then afterward, then you can kind of like strike up a conversation about like, hey, I was thinking I might run this, right?
Yeah.
You know, like one fun thing would be like, if I wanted to run Chain of Command, I might go play in a bolt action game. Bolt action's not my favorite game, but it's fun, right? And I would enjoy it enough to hang out with somebody and get to know them. And then maybe they'd be interested in playing my World War II miniature game.
Yeah, totally. It's finding like-minded people.
Yeah, and it's good doing it in degrees. And, you know, it's like any social thing. Like if you come out swinging, people sometimes will be like, well, I don't know. Like, and it's not even like an aggressive thing. Like, oh, like who would bring that? Right? That guy's a jerk. But it's more like people are like, well, I don't know. I've never heard of that game. I've never seen that guy before. I'll play something else, right?
This is a really weird reference, so for the 3 people that get this, but it's like the guy who shows up to the paintball field for the first time with like all the dye gear on, and you're like, you know what I mean? And you're like, oh, this is your first time. Like, you don't even know if you like it. And they're like, oh yeah, but I got all the gear and all the tactical stuff and I'm all strapped up. And it's kind of like, just roll into it. What's the meme right now on the internet? Where does the wind take us? Right? It's just like, sometimes that's the best way to get into something. An old Wargamer thing I remember reading on White Dwarf was, and I've always taken this to heart, was your favorite army is not the army you planned for, but the one you stumble into. And that can also be true of gaming groups. You know, it's not necessarily the thing you fastidiously set your mind upon, but it can be what you find yourself playing, and who you find yourself playing with can be even better.
Yeah, totally. And there's just like, everybody has their own motivations, but if we all enjoy playing this hobby and we don't find each other absolutely obnoxious for some very obvious reason, I'd give everybody a shot.
I agree.
You know, like I even try to like see it to the end, because I'm like, well, you know, I'll just see what I'm getting out of this. I'm not going to storm off and say I've had enough until we're actually finished. I'll walk away, I'll evaluate. And again, if it's one of those situations where that's not the case, well, no one's going to blame me for that.
Yeah, I think that's a top-down look at being in a group, finding a group, and managing group dynamics. I think next episode is going to be really cool because we're going to get back to basics. Max, do you want to give us a little bit of an insight?
Yeah, so my mind has been set even when we're doing this episode because I've already been doing the reading. But we're going to do the basic expert Dungeons & Dragons. I don't know how to describe it. It's not like, obviously it's more than one edition of that game, but there's also like all of the clones and spin-offs and other things in that area that take influence from that. So more like the basic expert D&D phenomena. Hopefully I haven't bitten off more than I can chew, but thankfully those rule systems are very light and very similar, so I should be okay.
I'm excited to have the conversation. That's like foundational stuff that a lot of the hobby is rooted in directly. So it'd be really cool to talk about and look at deeper.
The OSR is a hot ticket. Like, it's been a hot ticket, obviously. You know, it still is. It'll be interesting for us to acknowledge and dig into that a little bit more directly, because, you know, we've covered other things close to that, but yeah, it'll be fun.
Awesome. Well, everyone, thanks for your time, your listening. We'll be back next week, of course, with some coverage on BX. But for now, happy gaming.
Happy gaming.
We hope you enjoyed delving into today's episode. A big thanks to all of you out there for joining us. If you want to continue the conversation, you can find us on Instagram and YouTube at Tales and Tactics Podcast, or on all popular podcast platforms. Join us again on the next exciting episode of Tales and Tactics.